It's Friday night, your phone is buzzing with messages, friends are making plans, a party, a dinner, a crowded rooftop somewhere loud and bright. And you look at that phone, you read every message, and then you put it face down on the couch. Because right now, in this exact moment, you are already exactly where you want to be, in your home, in your corner, in your silence. And the strange thing, you don't feel like you're missing out. You feel like you've won. Most people would look at this and say, you're antisocial. You need to get out more. Something must be wrong with you. But here is what psychology actually says. The people who genuinely love staying home, who feel most alive, most creative, most themselves within their own four walls, are not broken. They are not afraid, and they are definitely not missing out. They are wired differently, and that wiring is far more sophisticated than the world gives them credit for. Today, we are going to go deep into the real psychology of people who love staying at home, what drives it, what it says about their inner world, and why this preference is one of the most misunderstood personality traits in modern psychology. Welcome back. I'm Psychology Brain. Let's get started. Science anchor. It's not antisocial, it's neuroscience. Before we go any further, we need to clear up the biggest misconception about people who love staying home. It is not shyness. It is not social anxiety. It is not depression. And it is definitely not laziness. The answer lives inside the brain, specifically in how it processes stimulation. In the 1960s, psychologist Hans Eysenck proposed something groundbreaking. He discovered that introverts and extroverts don't just have different personalities. They have fundamentally different baseline levels of cortical arousal. In simple terms, imagine your brain as a radio. An extrovert's radio is set to a very low default volume. To feel fully awake, engaged, and alive, they need to turn up the volume. They seek out noise, crowds, excitement, new people. External stimulation fills them up, but an introvert's radio is already set much higher. Their brain is processing more, always. More detail, more sensation, more internal noise. When they add a loud party, a crowded bar, a busy social schedule on top of that, the volume becomes overwhelming. Not unpleasant in the way pain is unpleasant, but draining in the way that running a marathon is draining. Home, for these people, is not a hiding place. Home is where the volume goes down, where the brain finally gets to breathe, where they stop performing and start existing. Neuroscientist Elaine Aron expanded this further with her research on highly sensitive people, discovering that roughly 15 to 20% of the population has a nervous system that processes sensory and emotional information significantly more deeply than average. For these individuals, home is not a preference, it is a biological necessity, the place where their nervous system finally exhales. Truth 1. Home is their creative universe. The first truth about people who love staying home is something the outside world almost never sees. Their inner life is extraordinarily rich. While the world assumes they are doing nothing, sitting alone, wasting time, living in isolation, something entirely different is happening inside. Their mind is running constantly, building worlds, solving problems, making connections, creating things that only exist in the space between silence and imagination. Think about some of the most remarkable creative minds in history. Emily Dickinson wrote almost 1,800 poems, almost entirely without leaving her home. She was not isolated by circumstance, she chose it, because solitude was not empty for her. It was the only place she could hear herself clearly enough to create. Isaac Newton developed his theories of gravity and calculus during the Great Plague of 1665, when he was forced to stay home from Cambridge. He later called that period the most productive 18 months of my life. For people who love staying home, solitude is not the absence of experience. It is the condition that makes deep experience possible. When the noise of the outside world fades, when there are no social performances to maintain, no energy to spend managing other people's moods, the creative mind opens like a flower in the quiet. This is why so many home lovers are writers, artists, musicians, thinkers, builders, not in spite of their preference for home, but because of it. Their home is not four walls, and it's an entire universe that exists inside those walls, one that most people who walk past the window never even know is there. Truth 2, they experience home differently than most people here is something that surprises people when they first hear it. For someone who loves staying home, a relationship with their living space is almost emotional. not just comfortable, emotional. Psychologists call this concept of deeply meaningful attachment to a physical space, place identity, the idea that certain environments become woven into how we understand ourselves. For home lovers, their space is not just a building, it is an extension of their inner world. Every corner is deliberately arranged, every object carries meaning. The lighting, the smell, the sounds, all of it is curated, not for appearance, but for feeling. When they rearrange a shelf or add a plant to a windowsill, they are not just decorating. They are expressing something about who they are in a language that doesn't require words. There is a Japanese concept called ma, which roughly translates to the meaningful pause between things, the space that isn't filled, the silence between notes and music. Home lovers understand ma instinctively. They know that an unscheduled afternoon, a whole Saturday with nowhere to be and no one to perform for, is not wasted time. It is the space where they find out who they actually are beneath all the noise the world asks them to make. And this is also why disrupting a home lover's space can feel deeply unsettling to them in a way that seems disproportionate to outsiders. If their environment is chaotic, their inner world becomes chaotic. If their home is calm and intentional, their mind follows. The home is not separate from them. It is them. Truth 3. Staying home is an act of self-knowledge. The third truth is perhaps the most important one, and the one most misunderstood by the world outside. Choosing to stay home is not avoidance, it is self-knowledge. There's a critical difference between someone who stays home because they are afraid of the world and someone who stays home because they know themselves well enough to understand what they need. The first is fear-based withdrawal, and the second is wisdom-based discernment. Psychologist Esther Buchholz spent her career studying what she called the need for alone time, arguing that modern psychology had become so focused on relationships and social connection that it had completely ignored the equally important human need for solitude. Her research found that the capacity to be productively alone, to be comfortable in one's own company, to self-regulate, to self-renew, was not a sign of social failure. It was one of the highest markers of psychological maturity. People who love staying home have often done the quiet work of getting to know themselves. They know what drains them. They know what fills them. They know that an evening alone with a book, a project, a meal they cooked slowly restores something in them that 3 hours at a party never will. This is not running away from life. This is building a life that is honest about what they actually need. And in a culture that glorifies busyness, that treats a packed social calendar as proof of worth, choosing to stay home is quietly radical. It says, I know who I am, I know what I need, and I value my peace enough to protect it. That is not weakness. That is one of the rarest forms of courage. Truth 4, the loneliness they never talk about. But we would be telling only half the truth if we didn't acknowledge the shadow side. Because even for people who genuinely love staying home, there are nights when the silence feels different, not peaceful, heavy. There are moments when they scroll through photographs of people out together, laughing, belonging to each other, and something small and quiet aches inside, not because they wish they were there, but because they wonder sometimes if anyone notices they are not. This is the part of the home lover's psychology that almost never gets spoken aloud. The longing, not for the crowd, but for one person. One person who understands their quiet. One person who would rather stay in with them than go anywhere at all. Psychologist John Cacioppo, the world's leading researcher on loneliness, made a crucial distinction that perfectly captures this. There is a difference between being alone and feeling lonely. Home lovers are deeply comfortable being alone, but like every human being on earth, they are not immune to loneliness. And because they have built such a self-sufficient inner world, because they have become so skilled at being alone, they sometimes forget to let people in. They wait. They hope someone will understand without being told. They keep the door closed, not to push people away, but because opening it has always felt like more vulnerability than they know how to offer. The quiet truth is this: behind every person who loves their home deeply, there is usually a hope that someday someone will love being home with them just as much as they do. 3 things home lovers should know if you are someone who loves staying home. Here are 3 things worth holding on to. 1, your preference is valid. Stop apologizing for it. Every time you say, sorry, I just want to stay in tonight, you are apologizing for understanding yourself. You don't owe anyone an explanation for knowing what you need. The right people will not need you to justify your quiet. 2. Solitude and isolation are not the same thing. Solitude is chosen, nourishing, and creative. Isolation is fearful, shrinking, and disconnecting. Check in with yourself honestly. Is staying home filling you up, or is it slowly becoming a wall? If your world is getting smaller not by choice but by fear, that's worth paying attention to. And because you deserve connection too, just on your own terms. 3. Let one person into your home, not your house. Your home, the real one. The inner world you have built so carefully in the quiet of your solitude. Let someone sit beside you in the silence. Let someone see what you watch alone, what you make alone, what you think about in the hours the world doesn't see. Because the greatest thing about building a beautiful inner world is finally sharing it with someone who deserves to see it. If you recognized yourself in this video, if Friday night at home feels like winning, not losing, if your space is your sanctuary and not just a place to sleep, if you feel most like yourself when the door's closed and the world is quiet, then I want you to hear this. You are not antisocial. You are not broken. You are not missing out on life. You are someone who has built a rich, intentional, deeply felt inner world. And that is something extraordinarily rare in a world that never stops making noise. The world needs its loud, social, ever-present people, but it also needs its quiet ones. The ones who sit still long enough to think deeply, to feel fully, to create something true. Don't let anyone rush you out of your peace. If this video felt like someone finally understood you, share it with one person who has ever called you antisocial. Maybe it will help them understand what they've been missing. Leave a comment below. What does your perfect stay-at-home evening look like? I genuinely want to know. Hit like if this felt like home. Subscribe and hit the bell, because every day we explore the hidden psychology of the people the world doesn't always take time to understand. I'm for Psychology Brain. Stay cozy, and I'll see you in the next one.